Nigeria definitely taught me about opportunity, the gift of opportunity. I won a lottery ticket because I was born with a British citizenship. From a mindset point of view, Nigeria was massive in terms of teaching me the role and the importance of opportunity. And that's one of the things that drives me in everything that I do. As I've gotten older, my views on money have certainly changed, and my views on success have certainly changed. It's definitely not about money, it's more about security. And you don't need money to have security. That's the important thing that social media misses these days. Success for me in this moment is about impact and leaving a legacy, something that once I'm gone still is here to help people along on their journey.
And welcome to another episode of the Need to Succeed podcast. I am super excited about this guest that we've got today. Like I always say, this podcast is really about unpacking the mindset of successful people. Because here's the thing, right? Two people can go through the exact same situation, and one person decides because of that situation, they have to go on to become wildly successful and achieve all the things that they actually want in life. While someone else who's gone through the exact same situation decides, well, you know what? I can no longer achieve the things that I want to achieve in life. Same situation, different outcomes. What is the difference in the mindsets? And that's exactly what we look to unpack on this podcast. And today, I promise you, we have an absolutely incredible guest. He is a TV personality. He is a financial expert, an author, a podcaster. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Peter Komolafe.
You got the surname right as well, man.
Come on.
That's good, man.
Nigerian connection, I couldn't mess that
All
one
right,
up.
listen, of course, man. And thank you so much for having me as well. It's nice to I don't often go on a lot of podcasts as a guest, and I'm normally interviewing people, so it's nice to have the dynamics kind of switched a little bit.
The tables have turned.
Indeed they have. Indeed they have.
Honestly, I'm super excited. And also just want to say this on air, like, thank you so much for being so graceful in accepting to come on here.
Oh, man, no
I was
worries.
a little bit like, how do I? Do you know what I mean? And you were just like, yeah, bro, let's do it.
Yeah, man. It's like, so we should give the little background on this, right? So we were doing a talk. I did a talk for KBM, Michael, and you were attending. And you were like, "Oh, dude, you should come on the podcast." I'm like, "Yeah, cool." It's like I don't mind going on to podcasts, and because I think at the end of the day, all of us have got a story that should be told and experiences that should be shared. And if we're trying to inspire the next generation of people coming behind us, then speaking about this openly is really, really important. And I just happen to be talking about money and investments and all that kind of stuff, things that are taboo, things that we don't get taught in school. And I've been through my own trials and tribulations. So if someone can learn from the mistakes that I've already made, then hopefully they don't have to make the same mistakes either. So
love that, man. And that's exactly the essence of this podcast. So hopefully we're going to get a lot
indeed,
valuable information today.
Man.
I have no doubt we will. Okay, brilliant. So the very first question, we've got a tradition on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And the very first question is, what does success actually mean to you?
Oh man, listen, if you asked me what success was when I was like in my 20s, I would have told you it was a Bentley GT Continental. It was a few like diamond necklaces around my neck, and nice watches. It's not that anymore. I'm a lot older now. So success for me in this moment is about impact and leaving a legacy, something that once I'm gone still is here to help people along on their journey. And that's partly my book does a piece of that, but there's more work to be done on that front.
Wow, it's there's this thing about legacy. Right? I think the older you get, the more you actually
100%.
You start thinking about mortality.
Dude.
What happens when I'm gone?
Yeah, dude.
You know what I'm saying?
It's like after we've had our fun in our 20s, we got out drinking, girls, and all this kind of stuff. You start thinking things differently. And for those of you maybe watching this and listening to this who are in your 20s, you'll be like, what the hell are you boys on about? But like, trust me, you'll be here one day. It's coming. It's coming.
Amazing, man. Okay, cool. So I really want to unpack, and this is what we do on the podcast, really understand your journey. Because, bro, look, if someone's looking at you now, they're like, let me just pause this podcast. Let me go see who's this Conversations of Money. Who's this Peter, right? They check you out. Oh, my God, it's on Channel 4, speaking the parliament. this guy's who is this superstar, right? But let's peel it all back and just really get that understanding of the journey, because all these things don't just happen in one day, right?
Yeah.
If I took it back to who were you at school? If you
Man,
had to kind of explain who you were, how would you describe yourself?
right. So I've got to kind of break this up into two segments then if we're going to talk about school, because like my primary school education, I did half of it in the UK, I did half of it in Nigeria. I did the latter part of my primary education and my secondary education in Nigeria. So two completely
So they
different
took you from
environments.
here and took
Oh
you.
yeah. Yeah,
They
so
tried.
like my parents came over in the 70s, right? So obviously work, study, like a lot of them did, right? And because they had me in 79, they put me out for foster care when I was 3 months old. So I went to a white family in East Sussex and they looked after me between the ages of 3 months to 8 years old. And my mum was like, oh, he needs to come back on a holiday to Nigeria to meet his brothers. That turned into a 10-year stint. So from like 8 to 18, I was out there. But in school, I was very, very studious. I was bad at maths. I hated maths. I had maybe 1 year where I did well with maths because the teacher was just hot. She was banging.
So you paid attention.
So people paid attention. I paid attention. But generally, I was bad with maths. But I did physics, chemistry, biology. I did all the sciences. My dad wanted me to be a doctor, a surgeon. So in school, I was cool. I was very, very good in school. I was very studious. I was head of the debate team. Um, it's a shame there was no YouTube or social media back then. You would have seen clips of me debating on the national stage, like literally on the national stage in Nigeria. So I did well in school. Yeah, fun times, man. I think when I was younger, I could cram things, I could learn things a lot quicker. And again, as you get older, that kind of deserts you. So your brain kind of transforms, and you learn how to apply yourself in a different way. But yeah, school was cool, man. I enjoy school.
Amazing. So okay, so let's kind of put that back a little bit, because you said 0 to 8. You were East Sussex.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, is that like Brighton kind of way?
Yeah, so two towns down from Brighton in Hastings. So you got
Hastings.
Brighton, Eastbourne, and then you got Hastings down the other side.
Okay, interesting. And what decade was this?
This I was born in '79, so this is early in the
Early 80s,
'80s. Yeah,
Okay, cool. Like a black kid with a white family
yeah.
in East Sussex in the 80s.
It
Come
was
on, we
fun.
got we got we got to dig
It
into
was
that a
fun.
little bit,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, so look, my foster parents were great. I was very, very lucky to have them. Um, but in primary school, obviously, I'm different. And I remember this one kid, Gary Swan, this dickhead.
Don't expose him or anything.
Oh, listen, no. I'll shout him out because he had to be dealt with, and in the end, he was because y- be, there were only two black kids in the entire school. So there was me, and I remember seeing another kid who was way older than me. He was in the senior years, which is probably 4 or 5 years ahead of me. So we used to see each other across the playroom, and we used to wave at each other, look at each other, and that was it basically. But yeah, Gary Swan, he basically made my life a living misery. Monkey noises, like break time was horrible. And when you're a kid, you don't know what's going on. Like you think you're the same as everybody else. And then my foster parents were like, he's colorblind. So he doesn't see you the way that everybody else sees you. They almost made me think it was his problem because he saw me as different to them, to everybody else. But it got to a point where this went on for maybe like a full like year, and my foster dad was just like, "Listen, next time, grab him." I'm not saying this is right, okay? It's not right, but it worked. He goes, grab him, punch him in the nose. I did that, and he didn't bother me ever again. But it was tough, man. It was tough. It's one of those times. It's a learning curve because you're a kid, realizing that you're different, and you're different because of something that you have no control over, and that really is kind of the epitome of racism in itself. So, you know,
How did you have that conversation with your obviously your foster parents at that time?
I would go home crying. And my dad would be like, "Oh, so what's happened?" And I'm like, this kid's making monkey noises at me, and I don't know why." And then he talks about the fact that he's colorblind, and don't worry about it. He's blind. You know, he makes that excuse for him. So you, as a kid, you're like, "Ah, you believe your parents, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
they were my foster parents. Like
yeah.
you believe them. It's like, oh, that's his problem. But he just kept going and going and going and going and going. And obviously it's upsetting, right?
Mm,
And then teachers don't do anything in school. I mean, I remember the day that I did confront him, I ended up sitting on the step at lunch, during break because
mm,
I did something wrong. It's like
mm,
this went on for like a full year and you
mm,
guys did nothing. And it's not like my foster parents didn't complain to the school. They
mhm,
did. They just did nothing. So it's like, it's just a very, very weird thing to deal with at such a young age. And then I go to Nigeria and it's like, yo, everybody's like me. It's not the same.
Yeah.
Like, I was different because I spoke like this in school out there. So I was
Mhm.
like, well, you will, that type of thing. Yeah, you know what I mean? But it was very, very weird. And that you kind of have it firmly cemented in your mind that, okay, there's a difference between people, if you will.
Crazy experience to have, as a kid. But it's strange how that works because, I've spoken to a lot of black people who have a similar lived experience because I went to school in Cambridge.
Okay.
Right, so that's crazy. So when I moved to the UK, I was in London for a couple of years, and then my mum said, "I don't kind of like what's going on here. Like, let's get you over to Cambridge." So I went
Yeah.
from literally one of the worst schools in the country to, at the time, the second best school in the country.
Yeah.
Right, but there was also that dynamic of me and my sister were the only black people in
Yeah.
there, and it's everything's all cool. But then when you kind of retaliate, all of a sudden
Yeah.
there's an issue now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean in that regards. But how do you um so when you were living with your foster parents, did you know that you had parents in Nigeria who were black who looked like you? And
Yeah. Okay. So when I was fostered, my parents were still here. So remember, they came over because they were trying to work and they
yeah,
were studying. So they were working like 2 jobs each. They were studying at the same time. My dad studied to be printer technology is what he studied because printing was big back then, right? And then my mum was studying fashion to be a fashion designer. So they had me, and they couldn't afford to give up work. They definitely couldn't afford to like stop studying. So they gave me out to foster care. So I used to see my parents every summer for like maybe 2 weeks. I'd go up to London, visit them. So I knew that they were there, but they were never a constant presence because I only saw them for 2 weeks every single year. So I didn't really know them that well.
mm. Did you have an understanding like these are my actual parents, or is it just more like these are people who are going to chill with at the summer for like a couple of weeks, or how did that dynamic work between your real parents and your foster parents in
I
your mind?
I knew that they were my parents, my real parents,
Mm,
but they weren't my real parents, if that makes sense. My real parents were my foster because these are the people that I'm seeing every single day. Like
mm,
when I'm being bullied at school,
yeah,
those are the guys who are
they had
comforting me and helping me, you know, deal with it. So they were my nurturers, if you will.
yeah,
But I knew that these are my real parents, my
yes,
my birth parents.
okay.
It's such a weird thing to try and describe. It really, really is. But yeah, there was that clear distinction, but at the same time, I didn't really see them as my real parents, if
Yeah.
that makes any sense.
I understand it because I've kind of moved around as well. So I always say to me, family is about, you know, our relationship. It's not about blood. It's about,
Yeah,
what
yeah,
is our
yeah,
experience
yeah,
amongst each other. That's
yeah,
really what family means to
yeah,
me. So I know exactly where you're coming from there. So at 8 then, you're going back for summer
yeah,
holidays,
yeah, yeah,
but just to Nigeria this
yeah, yeah,
time.
yeah.
So after 2 weeks, what's going on in your mind?
Bro, listen, I'm like 8, 9 years old. I'm counting down the days. Like, you know what I mean? I'm counting down the days. I'm packing my bags. I'm like, yo, when we go to the airport. And my mom's like, you're not going anywhere. And I'm like, what? You're not going anywhere. No, you're staying here. And I just started crying. I was like, why? Like, you need to understand our culture and all this. And I'm like, okay, I get it. But like, dude, I was so pissed off.
Mm,
I was so pissed. And it's an 9 years old. You can't run away. You can't do anything. So I was kind of just, I was there at
mm,
the end of the day. And, when I recount this, I'm always very cognizant of the fact that I don't want to appear as though I rejected my culture.
mhm,
But at the same time, I was 9 years old.
mhm,
It was a complete change. I didn't know what was going on.
mhm.
And so part of me was naturally rebellious anyway, because I didn't want to be there. I
Yeah.
don't want to be here, but I'm here out of not my own choice.
Got nothing to do with rejecting your culture. It's not, if you'd been living here with your parents the whole time, like your real parents the whole time, and then you move back to Nigeria. It's a whole different dynamic to
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
You know, you've kind of grown up on. So, but that wasn't the case, right? So naturally, any other kid, first of all, you got your parents.
yeah,
Like, I need to go see my parents, and then I've got school, I've got my friends. So this was meant to be a holiday.
yeah,
What's going on? So
yeah. And you know
naturally,
the funny thing, right? Because I included part of this journey in the book, in my book, and I've had so many people message me on Instagram who were of the same generation where parents came over, they were put out to foster care and
wow.
taken back. And there was one lady who messaged me. She actually has got an MBE now, and her story, oh my God, I was like, wow, it's incredible. The fact that she got taken back, she managed to escape and come back. Then for some reason they got her back a second time, stole her passport, like kept her passport from her. She managed to get back again. Like, it's amazing. But it's interesting to see when she was telling me about how she viewed it, there are some very, very strong similarities in terms of how it felt. And certainly how it shaped you as an adult, because it's definitely shaped me as an adult in terms of my way of thinking, the way I see the world, my experiences, and maybe why I do some of the things that I do. It's really, really interesting. That's the psychological bit.
Interesting. Okay, cool. I mean, I would like to definitely unpack that as we carry on the conversation. But so now you're here. This is kind of a new reality. How was Nigeria? Because you were there for 10 years.
Yeah, okay, look, shock factor, right? Day one. But you know what? The thing that I really appreciate, there's a handful of things actually I appreciate in Nigeria. That sense of family and community. Like, dude, there is nowhere else in the world that I've seen that has that. Like, my neighbors are my family. When I'm broke, my neighbors feed me, vice versa. That sense of community and family. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's even one of those things as well. Respect, right? You have clear, right, you're my elder, there's respect, there's this unwritten code of just being respectful. I miss that so much. I miss the fact that, we live in a very privileged society, right? People are more concerned about their iPhones and what TV size they have on their wall. Like, when I was out there, we had no running water, no electricity, but guess what? People are happy. People are content with life. We're in this rat race continuously where what's the next thing we can get? What's the next shiny thing we can go after? And it's like we fundamentally forget some of the things that are really, really, really important. That family culture, that togetherness, that community, just that appreciation for the little things that you have that make all of the difference. Like, I miss that so much. I miss the fact that Nigeria definitely taught me about opportunity, right? The gift of opportunity. I was born in 1979 out of no merit of, I didn't do anything. My parents just happened to have me here, like luck. As far as I'm concerned, I won a lottery ticket because I was born with a British citizenship, British birth certificate, British passport, and that gives me the right to apply for benefits in this country and to be able to be in this country to take advantage of all of the opportunity we have here. Like, from a mindset point of view, Nigeria was massive in terms of teaching me, I guess, the role and the importance of opportunity. And that's one of the things that drives me in everything that I do. I have 3 older brothers who weren't lucky enough to be born here. And I know for a fact they would kill to swap places with me. And so for me, I'm kind of like, I don't want to betray the opportunity that I have through no merit of my own and squander opportunity and be, I don't know, I guess someone who isn't ambitious and driven just because, hey, I've got the opportunity, but it doesn't really matter. My brothers would kill to be in my position. So I try to optimize every opportunity I can. And that's really driven everything that I've done or tried to do through my career, even up to date now, being on my own for 3 years as a business owner.
That's so powerful. That's something that I carry with me as well, because growing up in Nigeria, it wasn't something that I started thinking about up until probably about 8 years ago. And I started thinking, bro, like, you grew up with some crazy talented people.
Bro, listen, man. Listen. We're different. We are different. And people talk about Nigerians being entrepreneurial. We are different, right? So when I was 16, 17, we were writing adverts for UNICEF, adverts for radio, adverts for TV, anything to help us make a little bit of money so that we could start a business or we could do something, earn some money. And I've met so many other people who are like, yo, I learned how to write scripts. I learned to do this. Creative thinking. We are gifted with that. And it's not that we're gifted because, we're all just gifted. Necessity. In the environments where we were at, it's a necessity that you have to think creatively. You have to be entrepreneurial. You can't just sit there and be like, I wonder what's going to happen now. And twiddle your thumbs. Nothing's coming for you.
Benefits.
Like nothing's coming for you. You've got to make it happen on your own. And so, and that's one of the things that I see as a common thread through every Nigerian that I ever speak to, creativity, because necessity requires us to be that way.
Wow. Well, that just gave me the chills, man. It's I couldn't have put it more eloquently myself. Yeah, genuinely, I just felt a bit because it's so true. And I remember just having that clear realization about 8 years ago. Awesome. So it sounds like you enjoyed Nigeria after the initial shock.
Hey, listen, I'll tell you what I do miss. I miss the Nigerian food right now, bro. I'm not gonna lie, but I've been talking about this for months. I need some suya. All right. I live in the Midlands. I live in Shropshire. There's none of that, bro. None of that. Like go see the pounded yam. Oh my god, dude, come on, man.
Hungry, bro. Stop, relax. But you know what it is? I was vegan for just over a year, and then I went back to Nigeria. And bro, like as much as I always keep blaming my family members for going, just shut up, just eat it. As much as I keep blaming them, it didn't take that much convincing.
Hey, listen, the temptation is strong, man. Temptation is strong. Temptation is strong.
The food, bro, and the quality of meat, the organic nature.
Yeah.
I forgot what real food tastes like. Like when you eat meat in Nigeria, like it's difficult to explain until people actually go and eat this stuff. It's organic. It's different.
Yeah.
And because I've been away for so long, I didn't remember what real food tasted like. Until I went back. It's just incredible. But that is on a side note. Let's move on. So I got a bit nostalgic then for a second. So how was the decision made that you're going to move back to the UK?
So I finished secondary school when I was about 16 or so. So I went to Oshogbo Grammar School in Osho State. And I think it was very, very clear between my mum and my dad that were like, okay, we need to do something with him because he can't stay here. Because the choice was finish secondary school, go to university. But go to university to do what? I had, obviously, sciences behind me, so I could go and study medicine. But again, they've been telling me since I was like 12 years old, you've got a lot of opportunity. You're very, very lucky to be born in the UK. At one point, you're going to go back and you're going to be on your own, so you're going to have to fend for yourself. And so they made the decision, I think, just as I came out of secondary school, that they needed to get me back here. The issue was we weren't wealthy. Like we didn't have any money. So it took them a very long time to save up, that 800, 900 pounds for a plane ticket to get me here. In the end, they had to call in an old debt from money that they lent someone, I think 20 years earlier, because they were like, dude, we need to get him back. And then they got me a ticket and they sent me back. And it was very sudden. It was really, really sudden. My dad just came home and goes, I booked you a ticket. You're going to be going back. It was supposed to be in a week. Then he came back 3 days later and he goes, you're going tomorrow. So it was like, pack your stuff. Actually, no, it's the same day. Because I remember he came back from work very, very early and he goes, in about 6 hours, you're going to be at the airport. You're getting on a plane. So I had to literally pack all of my stuff, get together. You give me 50 quid, airport.
Bro, man, that's... did you even have time to process? Like, what were you thinking at that time?
There wasn't any time to process, but they told me that the day was coming. So I was kind of prepared. I mean, we lived in Alagbado, right, which is on the outskirts of Lagos, right? And it was right under the flight path. And I used to sit literally at my window and just look at the planes. I mean, like British Airways flights. And I'm like, bro, I need to get one of those flights. So I'd been waiting for the day to come along.
You were actually like ready.
I was prepared. Mentally, I was prepared. I was like, okay, cool. It's go time, right? But the reality was, I didn't really put too much thought into it. And I do talk about this in the book, in the fact that, I'm excited to get to the airport, get on a plane, but I'm on the plane, I'm excited. I land, and I'm like, hold up, I need to go back to my foster parents who haven't heard from me in 10 years, who I've not spoken to for 10 years. What happens if they're not at the same address? And then reality starts dawn on me like, fuck.
Well, hang on. None of this. So what? Okay, so let's just rewind a little bit. So when you get on that plane, there's no plan.
The plan was to go and find your foster parents.
Wow. So when you actually land, obviously you got all this excitement, you land,
Yeah.
and the reality hits you. Like, how are you feeling?
I would say nervous, but I didn't have any choices. I'm here, like I'm on the plane. Like you land, you go to the address. If they're there, great. If they're not, figure it out.
Wow.
Luckily, they were there after 10 years.
Wow.
Luckily, they were. So I didn't have to deal with the alternative. And I'm thankful because they took me in. They hadn't heard from me for 10 years. They hadn't heard from my parents for 10 years. It's like then for a kid to rock up, they hadn't seen for 10 years and be like, it's okay, you can come in. We'll look after you. We'll get you on your feet.
How's the reception? Like, as in that moment how were you feeling when you approached the door?
Well, I arrived at like 12 o'clock in the afternoon to their address.
Yeah.
So I'm like 18. The concept of people go to work wasn't in my head. I was so immature at 18. I was so immature. So I'm knocking on the door, no one's there, and I'm like, shit. So I'm like, okay, I've got my suitcase. And where we lived was kind of like, it's an old like council place, right? So you got 2 houses, you got an alleyway in the middle. So I literally sat myself in the alleyway for like 4 hours. Then someone recognized me. I was like, oh, come in, make a cup of tea, get warm.
It's crazy.
And I was just lucky that they were still there.
Wow, that's crazy. The first time, I'm just thinking about that person who first recognized you, because I forget that you were at 8 years old. You had distinctive features, right? So they would kind of, is that Peter?
Yeah, but to be fair, when I came back when I was 18, literally, I looked like I was like 14. I was 5'5" or 5'4". I had a growth spurt in my late 20s, like literally. I'm 6'2" now, so I had a growth spurt late. So I don't think I was too dissimilar to the way I looked when I left at 8. So they recognized me like, oh yeah, it's you, type thing. So
amazing. And did you have like any sort of like nervous feelings about meeting your parents again? I guess it is like re-meeting them, right?
Yeah, it's re-meeting them. I mean, look, it wasn't easy or anything like that. I was kind of oblivious. Naivety is probably a good thing, and it worked in my favor, to be honest. But I knew that I was going to be on my own. So they took me in for about, I think it was about a month or 2, helped me get my national insurance number, first job, and then I was out pretty much on my own. And yeah, it's been like that ever since.
Wow, amazing. So okay, cool. So I mean, so 2 months. When you came, was it like a warm reception? Was it kind of like?
It was a lukewarm reception because it was more shock.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I try to put myself in their shoes. Mm-hmm. I found out 18 months, maybe 2 years ago, that they didn't realize that I was in Nigeria until 3 months after I had left, and they heard it from somebody else who had told someone else that they knew. So it's like, I leave on this 2-week holiday, don't come back. They think I'm dead, like I've been kidnapped. Then they're here 3 months later, oh, he's in Nigeria. And no one had told them. Nobody had told them. So then all of a sudden, fast forward 10 years and I rock up. They're like shocked. They're not wealthy. Mm-hmm. So they're like, they've got another mouth to feed that they can't afford to feed, but they still had the compassion to take me in. It's pretty amazing. It really, really is.
That's chilling, man. Crazy. So like 2 months in now, obviously you've been away from this country for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And you left as a kid, really. So you don't really understand the system. You don't understand the culture in that element. What job did you get? I
was stacking shelves in the spa.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, first job. And the manager there was horrible. He was horrible. I lasted there for a bit. And then, got into a flat share, which I ended up losing and being homeless because I was being paid. But then I didn't understand how money worked. I didn't understand when you get paid, like you've got a budget and then pay your rent. Trust me, I was so naive. So I'm getting paid and I'm like, hey, money. spend. Rent comes up. I'm in a flat share. Where's
Where's
rent?
where's your rent? Yeah.
Off you go, out.
When you say off, you go out. What do you?
Kicked me out.
Yeah,
I
but
couldn't go back to my foster parents because I'm like, I'm already a burden anyway. So it's
yeah,
like, deal with it on
out
your
to
own.
where?
I slept on the streets for a good month or two.
What are we talking? Summertime?
No, this is in like October, November,
Wow.
December.
Okay.
Cold.
So I mean, that's an experience that we share.
Yeah.
Kind of the homelessness. But I'm just trying to think of that first night because you had a home yesterday, right?
Yeah.
You didn't pay your rent. All of a sudden, now you're out on the streets. Like, what was that realization like? When did they hit you? The hang on, I'm not sleeping in the bed tonight. I'm not.
It hits you pretty quickly because like it's it's like a door opening and then you just face with a blizzard. It's literally like that. It's like the door creaks open, blizzard outside. Deal with it. It's like you can't go back. You've got to go forward. So there was no choice. There was no how do I do this? It's like just go. Step forward and deal with it. And that's what I try to do to the best of my ability. It was it was shocking. And that's when the thing that dawned on me in that moment was I don't have anyone to call. Right? So normal people with a normal family be able to call dad, brother, sister, uncle. I have zero family here. So who do I call? I can't call my mum and dad in Nigeria because they gave me their last bit of money to get me on a flight out here. So I'm not going to go and be like, yo, this is my situation. Can you help me? They can't help me. I can't go back to my foster parents because I'm already a burden. They've already helped me. So where do you go? And that for me is like the homelessness piece has been one of those things that has driven me my entire life, my entire career, because I never want to go back to that place again where that could ever be a possibility. And that isn't to say that money becomes the all important commodity to prevent that from happening. As I've gotten older, my views on money have certainly changed, and my views on success have certainly changed. It's definitely not about money. It's more about security. And you don't need money to have security. That's the important thing that social media misses these days.
Okay, that's interesting. That's another thing to unpack. But I just want to get a better understanding of, because you said you were out there homeless for a month, right, in the streets. Like, do you remember what that experience was like in terms of, obviously you're there without protection, and do you remember the experience from first yourself internally, how you were feeling within yourself, and then also how you felt other people were looking at you?
Yeah, I mean, look, internally it's panic initially. It's like, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And it's like, well, there's not a lot you can do. So if you think about it logically, right, the first thing you need to do is you need to try and get into, I don't know, the council, job centre, something like that, get on benefits, see if you can get into a house in that way, get in some emergency shelter or something. So thinking through the logical steps. But in the moment where you're kicked out, you haven't got anywhere to go, it's, okay, I need to get through the first night. So it's panic, it's panic, it's panic. And then it's all about, okay, so if I'm here and I've got nowhere else to go, where can I find somewhere that might be a little bit safe for me to kind of put my head down and try and get through this next few hours so that during the daytime I can swing into action? It's panic initially. And when you start, the first like 2 or 3 days, it's not necessarily the fact that you're thinking about what other people are thinking about you, because you're more consumed with, oh my God, I need to figure this out. It's when you're out there in a sustained period, a week, it turns into 2 weeks, it turns into 3 weeks. And the reality is that when you're homeless, people think that you're the architect of your own demise, right? People think you're a druggie or you're an alcoholic. You're the reason why you got there. When actually the reality is, if you don't have a forwarding address, can't get on any benefits, can't do anything with a bank account. So if you go to actually apply for anything, where do we send stuff to? I don't have an address. Sorry, we can't help you. So it's a vicious cycle. And then you find yourself in this situation where you feel helpless, hopeless, you haven't got anywhere to go. And the system that is there that is designed to help you isn't helping you because you don't have a forwarding address, which you have no control over. It's really, really weird and messed up how it works. And people treat you badly because of that thought of, yeah, he must be a druggie or an alcoholic. That's why he's there. Like, go get a job. It's like, if it was that simple, I would. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Wow. So yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and yeah, again, you've articulated it very, 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 very well. How did you get yourself out of that situation?
I was lucky, man. I was sleeping under a table in the town centre, and a guy called Keith Dighton. His name was Keith Teeth. He had really bad teeth, and I found out about a month or two ago. He's actually died now. He's actually passed now, and he found me. And he was like, "Dude, you cannot sleep here. Like, it's freezing cold. Like, you can't sleep here. Like, come and keep at my place, and we'll try and figure out what we're going to do in the morning and stuff like that." And for some reason, I did trust him. Um, Slept in his house, and he goes, "Look, I've got a family in Rye, which is very, very close to Hastings. Come and stay at my mum's house for a bit, and then we'll figure out what we need to do." And he was the lifeline that got me to the point where I had an address where I could actually apply for shelter and all that kind of stuff that really kicked me into action. I bounced around quite a bit after that, but he gave me that point of contact to actually get the ball rolling.
Wow, it's crazy, isn't it? Yeah, it's weird when people talk about the homeless. They kind of have this image of just one stationary, but that's what I talk about as well. You kind of move around, and certain nights you don't even know where you're sleeping. And there's this embarrassment of trying to ask people, and it's,
Yeah,
there's a whole different, it's like this ecosystem of just crappy
yeah.
situation, right?
And the things you don't want to ask people because you know what people's reaction is going to be.
Exactly.
Go get a job, you druggie. And it's like, you don't know how I got here. You don't understand how I got here, but the judgment is instantaneous. They just immediately dismiss you because, hey, he must be a druggie. He must be an alcoholic. It's so hard.
Crazy, man. I mean, obviously, I'm looking at you today, and I'm thinking, okay, cool. Like, look how successful you have become, right? Um, but how? Okay, cool. So you've gone through the homelessness. You've bounced around. At this point, in my mind, anyway, you still haven't got an education. All you've kind of got is this shelf stacking experience,
Hmm.
right? Like, how did that person? What's been the transition from that person to where you are today? How has that happened?
My big break has been in the fact that through being on benefits, I got forced to go to an interview in a building society. And, what happened from homelessness was I ended up racking up a load of debt because what I realized was, well, I'm homeless.
Can borrow money.
I've got a checkbook. So I can go to Tesco's, fill up a basket, write a check. They'll let me leave with the food. And then the check just does what it does, right? Bounce. So that spiraled into debt. I get on my feet, get on benefits, and I was told, look, if you don't go for this interview, you're going to lose your benefits. And I'm like, it's a bank. I owe banks money. Like, I'm not going to rock up. I've been running for them for like probably 4 years at that point. I'm not going to rock up and be like, hey, I want a job, because if you're one of the ones that I owe money to, you're going to be like, hey, you owe us money. And I've been trying to abscond from this. They're like, if you don't go, you're going to get taken off benefits. So I went to this interview and I tried to sabotage it. I went in jeans, leather jacket, trainers, completely disinterested. And for some reason, the lady who interviewed me was a lady called Jenny Berry. She'd got me speaking. She was like, oh, my customers are going to love you. I was like, yeah, whatever. Like, you're going to do your credit score and all your fit and proper tests, and you'll find out I've got a lot of debt, and that'll be it. I don't know what she did, and I don't know if she did anything, but I actually got the job, started in the job, and it just turned out I was really, really good at speaking to people about money and translating. By the way, you've got X amount of money in the bank. If you had this interest rate or this investment return, you were telling me that you wanted to go on a holiday. Well, that return pays for that holiday, and then all of your money's intact. Light bulb, hello. So from there, as a cashier, I then send them to the financial advisor in the back. He writes a ton of business off the back of the fact that I'm passing people. And then all of a sudden, go from cashier to customer facing, and then it just snowballs from there into Canary Wharf in 2012 without a university degree. That was, again, coincidence and a little bit of luck, and taking a little bit of a risk. And I started in Canary Wharf as a telephone boy on £28,000 a year. In 5 years, I went from that role all the
When
way
you
up
say
to the...
starting Canary Wharf, can you explain to us, ignorant people who are not in the finance world, what that means? Because to us, that's just a location, right? That's a postcode.
Yeah, so listen, when you're in... So Canary Wharf, for me, at least, the minute I got my foot in the door in financial services, like there was only one place that was like, if you want to aim high, you need to be there, and it was Canary Wharf. It's like the Wall Street. It's like it's where the brokers are. It's where the big investment houses are. J.P. Morgan. That's where it's at.
Okay.
So for me, I was like, oh, bro, if I could work there one day, I've made it. And I remember back then I was also doing music. I had a friend who's still doing music right now, Jungle Boy. He had an apartment in Canada Water. So I'd go up to London on the weekend and record, and we'd be sitting on his balcony looking into Canary Wharf. We'd walk around Canary Wharf on a Saturday, Sunday. And I'm like, dude, bruh, this place is so lush. Like, if I could work here. Oh, dude, seriously, man. Literally. Talk about visualization. Man, listen. I visualize like, bro, if I could be in a suit walking around this shopping mall and working here, like, imagine how much money you must be making. You're set for life, right? So it was the pinnacle of a place to go to. And in 2012, I quit my job in corporate banking where I was working with businesses to move back to London, thinking it would be easy to get a job in Canary Wharf. I didn't know at the time that when your CV goes out, if you don't have a university degree, a lot of these companies in Canary Wharf, they won't even look at you. And so I kind of came back to London thinking, hey, it's going to be easy. Can't be that hard. 4 months looking, nothing. Applying for jobs, nothing at all. Then I get a phone call out of the blue from a recruiter. He goes, there's a job in Canary Wharf I think you're going to be really, really good for. And I'm like, all right, so where in Canary Wharf? He goes, 1 Canada Square. I'm like, okay, what floor? 50th floor. And I'm like, rah. 50th floor.
That sounds high.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've watched for years at that point The Apprentice with the flyover and that pointy building. I'm like, dude, like that's the building. Like, you know what I mean? Come on. Now I'm on the 50th floor, the top floor of that building, potentially. And he goes, you know, you got to go through telephone interview and you got to have face-to-face and all these assessments and stuff. But that was the pinnacle. And like the assessment day, like I remember the telephone interview because I lived in near Beckton, Galleon's Reach at the time. Telephone interview day, I was like, I'm going to Canary Wharf because I wanted to put myself there. Like, yo, I'm going to take this call. I'm going to be in Canary Wharf and I'm going to think about all the times I used to walk around this place thinking, yeah, if I can work here, it's going to be so sick. And I took the phone call, got through the assessment. I was like, okay, cool. We passed that stage. Then the assessment day comes along and the dude was like, listen, it's going to be quite competitive. Just make sure you're not late. Just don't be late. One thing, don't be late. So I rock up 20 minutes early, last person to walk into the room, right? This is on the 50th floor overlooking like Tower Bridge, the Shard. Beautiful, mate. They put us in the best view in the building. And it was just like 25 dudes. And every hour just cutting.
Well, so when you say cutting, what you're getting told right there and
there?
Oh
yeah. You're staying for the next round. You lot didn't make it. And just cutting people all the way through the day. Brutal, mate. But it was full of assessments, like group tasks, individual tasks, questions. And what they did, and this is something I always say to people, if you're going to a group interview, you need to be mindful and be aware and be observant of your room. Because what they did is they planted 3 people in the 25 that actually worked for the business. So their job was to assimilate, see who the leaders are, see who's thinking outside the box, see who's actually there being serious. And it's little things like that, right?
Wow.
And so cutting all the way through, got through that day. And then we had another round of like processes and stuff like that. I finally got the job, but I started as like literally on the phone, pick up the phone and make phone calls. Basically, that was my job.
Yeah.
And then I quickly started to realize like, yo, the other dudes are earning some serious cash, like 120, 200 grand a year here. And I'm earning 28 grand supporting these guys. I'm like, this is what I'm here for. And I think about Nigeria and wanting to be back in the country and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, this is my opportunity. And it took 5 years. I went from being on the phone to the executive team of that company within 5 years. And it was probably the most productive 5 years that I've had in my career so far. Just literally promotion after promotion because I worked my socks off. Wow. And application. And I learned a lot in the corporate space around relationships, understanding your power and your influence in the corporate structures, how to leverage that, and how to stand your ground without being too overly aggressive, especially as a black person as well. not being overly aggressive, understanding how to use the system to your benefit. And, those 5 years were amazing, man. And it really brought me to this point, to what I do now, because I learned so much during that period of time that it has kind of translated into a lot of the stuff that I'm doing online now.
Well, like honestly, bro, it's like there's certain things. I mean, a lot of that was very, very powerful, but there's just certain things that people who achieve success. There's just these little subtle differences, like you traveling to Canary Wharf to do a telephone interview. You could have been in anywhere.
Yeah, but so this is the thing though, right? I think that if you really, really, really want to progress, you really have to put your mind to it. And for me, I just knew that if I was in the environment, walking around, visualizing being there, that my mind would be so sharp and so on point that I would naturally put in the best performance. It's about priming yourself. And the worst thing you can do when you're trying to approach anything in life that is meaningful to you is just go into it without any prep. That was my prep. I was literally in Canary Wharf for like an hour before, walking around, watching people, like just visualizing myself there, what it would be like, what it would feel like to be there. And that I took into the telephone interview, thinking, right, mentally I'm prepared. When you're mentally prepared, it's amazing what you can make happen alongside visualizing, like setting your goals in your head. Because if you can see it, you can make it happen. But you have to be able to see it in the detail. And the detail for me was, I'm there. I'm walking down here. I'm buying a suit from that shop. I'm wearing this colored suit. I visualized the entire thing there, and that helped me with preparedness.
Wow, so powerful, man, so powerful. And then obviously you've kind of been in this place. You've worked your way up now for the past 5 years. This is kind of pretty much what you were looking to achieve. This were your goals. At the fifth year, you're at this position now. Like, what are you kind of thinking? Like, how are you processing things?
Look, the funny thing about success is success changes, or your idea of success will change. You got to understand that, I come from a background where money was always scarce. We didn't have any money. And to be in a position where you start then earning 100, 125, 150 grand a year, you're like, holy fuck. Like, I've never had this kind of money before. And what you naturally do is you then start spending money on just dumb shit. Like, literally, I would buy £1,000 suit. I bought £1,000 pair of trainers, right? Just because I've never had this kind of money before. I'm here, finally. I've worked my socks off to get here. I'm going to enjoy the spoils of my success. And my ideal success at that point was, I'm the best dressed guy in the room. And that was calculated as well. Because at the end of the day, I mean, on the 50th floor, there were probably 3 people of color. There was me, Andy, and there was the IT guy. So 3 people of color. And on the 50th floor, there were probably about 200 of us, right? So me being me, I know that when I walk into a room, I have to put that little bit more extra effort in because people automatically have preconceptions about you. So for me, I'm calculated. Not so much now because I work on my own and I've dropped away from that. But literally, my suit was coordinated. It was coordinated with the lapel pin, with the tie, with the pocket square. I'm the best dressed in the room because I want people to be like, yo, this guy looks serious. I'm going to pay attention to what he's saying. And I made a point that when I was in meetings, I only spoke when I had something important and something poignant to say, not just talking for the sake of talking. I think that's how you lose value. And people would always look at me as, oh, Pete's speaking. He's got something important to say. And those were valuable lessons that I learned and things that I put in place. So for me, the suits were important in terms of that projection of image, walking into a room, being taken seriously. Speaking in the way that I do, speaking clearly is very, very important in that kind of environment. That was kind of honed to a certain extent. And it serves me well in the corporate space when I'm working with brands still, because they want that level of articulation. I think it's changing a little bit now with social media and the fact that people can work. But in my time, that was the case. So the suits were very, very important. But that was my idea of success. And that changed. So when I get to the 5th year, I'm sat on the executive board of this company. I'm like, well, there's now politics that you have to deal with, and people saying things because it's the right thing to it's the correct thing to say in the moment, opposed to being the right thing to say in the context of the bigger scheme. And I just got tired of it, and I got to the point where I was like, I'm working with advisors, I was qualified at the time, we're making people a lot of money, and in the back of my mind I was like, how on earth have I learned all of this stuff in the last 5 years, really realized this stuff about pensions and investments and all this stuff and how it all works? Why didn't I know this when I was 18 years old? When I got back here, I would have been able to make better decisions. And that was kind of the catalyst for me in the end, leaving that job to go and advise full time, to try and see if I could actually make what I'm doing now possible in some way, shape, or form. So it was a transition to what I did now, whilst at the time not really understanding that I was transitioning to this specific thing.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, I mean, did you feel like, obviously you had the experience, you'd been working with, I'm guessing, high-powered individuals anyway, but nonetheless, you're leaving this safety blanket, this safety bubble. I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast are either entrepreneurs or they're aspiring entrepreneurs, and especially when if you're on the breadline anyway, you know what? Let me just try something. That's cool. But if you're kind of, I'm buying £1,000 suits, like I'm all right. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, like how's that leap when you kind of leave that comfort zone?
Right. So for me, I had a couple of moments of epiphany. So I'll be count this in the book. Fridays were dress down day. So normally you come in casual clothes. Nobody does any work on a Friday. Everyone goes out on a Thursday, gets pissed. Friday's light work.
Nice,
Yeah. So on this Friday, I had clients in the office. So they'd left. I then ended up speaking to this guy who knew was kind of on the same amount of money. And like this guy, you see him walking down the street. Like, dudes who wear like jeans where like the trainers are eating at the back of their jeans and it's all rotten and torn. And you'd look at him and think, what are you doing? Like, buy some decent jeans. But this guy started speaking to him like, yo, so what you doing this weekend? He's like, oh, I'm going to Cornwall, got a place down there, we're going for the weekend. And in my head, I'm like, you got a flat in London, you're telling me you got a flat in Cornwall. He goes, yeah, you should come down, it's amazing. And I'm looking at him thinking, bruh, your jeans are busted, your trainers are busted. Everything about you just says like you've got nothing. And then I'm stood here in like an £1,000 suit with a nice like Rolex on my arm. And I'm thinking, I don't have 2 properties. At that point, I had nothing. And I was just like, no, hold up. So I'm doing something wrong here. And so I had to fundamentally start looking at, right, you're earning good money, but you're wasting a lot of this money now. You have to start changing things. And you have to start thinking in a pragmatic way around your finances and what you're doing all of this for. And there is no point in earning 150 grand a year like I was, spunking it all up on the wall on Duck and Waffle or Boysdale's. Like, why? Yeah, it's a great time, but what do you have to show for it? And that fundamentally kicked off a transition in the way that I thought and the way that I started to utilize money. And that's the stuff that I talk about now in the book and the podcast and everything that I do, because those are just fundamental lessons. Like, money is an important element of what we do, of our day-to-day lives. Most of our goals are attached to some kind of financial accoutrement. So it's all about trying to find where both meet in a Venn diagram, if you will, so you can start using the money to make the things that matter to you happen.
Wow. So let's talk about this book then, because you just released the book recently. What was the motivation behind the book, and what's the book about?
So with the book, I just wanted to mainly kind of leave something behind. Like, after I'm gone, like, a book's going to be here, it's going to help people and stuff. But the book is called The Money Basics. So through my 15-year career in financial services, through all of my own personal lessons, from being homeless, not being able to budget, making me homeless, to getting into debt, to not understanding how to save a safety cushion, to investing, to completely destroying my credit score to the point like you can't get anything on credit, like nothing. So I built something called the BASIC formula, and BASIC is an acronym for the 5 financial principles that are important to help you build financial security. And that's essentially what the book is about. It covers a lot of my own backstory, so I tell a lot of the stuff that I've already spoken about here, but I then translate that into formulas, into parts of the formula, the lessons, case studies, exercises, those kind of things.
That's powerful, man. Sounds sound like I should pick up a copy.
Hey,
To be
man.
honest, no, because genuinely, like, what you've just articulated there, it's difficult for people to understand that it starts with one thing, and it could be not being able to budget, and then you end up being homeless, and then your credit's shot, and then like you said, not having an address, so it's difficult to get yourself back
Yeah.
into the ladder, and
Yeah.
then your credit's shot. Like all of those lessons, I can't. And then obviously, what you've then gone on to do in the financial world, I can just imagine the amount of incredible lessons that book will have to be able to just take someone to say, hey, you just do this, do this, do this, do this. You can not just protect yourself, but you can also build for the future as well.
Yeah, but you know what it is, right? There are a lot of people who talk about these things, and like this isn't reinventing the wheel in any way, shape, or form. But I think that when you think about conversations of money, and that's the name of my company, pun intended there.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think about conversations of money, it's often very convoluted. It's very actually quite threatening. People are quite scared to talk about
Especially
it
in
because it's
England.
like, whoa, we're talking about something here that's a little and I wanted to make sure that it was relatable, more importantly. So by me sharing the mistakes that I've made, hopefully it makes it more relatable for people to be able to, take some of that information on board.
Wow, man, yeah, that's incredible. I think conversations of money. So it's interesting because I was talking about earlier on when how we first met and how I was speaking to my friend in the car at the event. I was literally in the car and I was like, yeah, conversations of money is such a good. I mean, I'm thinking of getting him on my podcast. I've got to reach out to him. And my friend was saying to me, yeah, you got to reach out to him. And then you walk. I didn't know you were going to be at the event, right? And you walked. I was like, bro, that's conversations of money. So it's a good brand.
Yeah,
A
man.
good brand
Thank
for
you, man. Thank you, bro.
for what
Thank
you're
you.
trying to achieve. Yeah, no problem at all, bro. But honestly, this has been such an incredible conversation. I've really, really, really enjoyed this, and I feel like I've learned first of all a lot about you,
Thank you, man.
but also kind of where you're going as well, which is interesting. Can we actually just talk about that a little
Yeah.
bit? Because you talk about the things that you're talking about now, apart from obviously yourself and thinking, hang on, I need to sort out my situation because I'm spunking all this money. Like, what's your intention with these conversations of money that you're kind of having now?
Well, look, I am a qualified financial advisor and mortgage advisor, but I stepped away from all of that because the compliance of being able to say the things that I say and have the conversations that I have, it's a minefield. And if I was thinking about this purely from a business point of view, I should go and get my own practice and be a financial advisor. I could coin it in. But the point is that if I did that, I feel like I'd be restricted to a certain extent. And I think that I would lose maybe a little bit of the trust and, I guess, reputation that I have because I'm not affiliated with anyone. I don't say the things that I'm saying because I want to manage your investment. So I'm looking for you to invest with me. I'm not doing any of that. It's me literally just trying to share everything that I've learned, all the lessons that I've been through in a genuine, easy to understand fashion without any of the hyperbole. I never talk about getting rich or Bugattis or millionaire. I don't do any of that. My stuff is bland, it's simple, it's boring intentionally because I think when you boil everything down to its essence, it should be a very honest, down to earth conversation. Lamborghinis, Rolexes, all this kind of stuff belongs nowhere in the conversation when you're talking to people about money. The motivations become wrong, right? And what people expect it becomes tainted. So I don't necessarily want to go, and I will not go and be a financial advisor or build my own firm, although it would be a way that I could create incredible wealth. So the way I see this moving forward is I'm currently in the process of actually building something where I'll be able to work with businesses that will be very, very different, where companies will pay me to deliver a service to their employees. And we're going to build that into an actual platform itself. I do coaching here and there, but the reality is that with coaching, unfortunately, people don't necessarily see the value in coaching. And this is the thing that I guess it's a little confusing because people will acknowledge that they have issues. They have no idea how to solve their finances. And when you put the choice in front of them, okay, take a coaching session where you got to pay maybe 100, 200 quid. People are like, no, they don't see the value in it. But if you give them a choice to do something else that won't benefit them as much, they'll happily shell out the money. And so there's kind of like a disconnect. And I'm still trying to figure out how you provide something that can take people on a journey where it doesn't feel like it's a financial burden or financial outlay. But building a platform is one of the things that I'm looking to do at the moment structurally. Then beyond that, it is about trying to do some work. And I was invited to Parliament a couple of weeks ago to actually see about how we change the financial education curriculum in the UK. I mean, the meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago was very, very encouraging. And the consensus was that it has to be compulsory in primary schools, at least to start off with, because the data shows us that we form financial habits at the age of 7. And I can tell you now, if you read my book, I'll tell you what financial habit automatically was formed when I was 5 to 6 years old. It's incredible. And that came back to haunt me when I started making good money, because the mindset was already there. It was already baked in, and I didn't even know it at age 7. And it's taken a lot of, I guess, introspection to find out what that thing is. So that for me is a big piece of work. And whether that's working with organizations or doing something on my own as part of my platform to change in terms of delivery. But that's really the end goal. It's not about making tons of money. I don't really care about that. I want to leave something behind that will benefit people after if I die tomorrow, I want to leave something behind.
That's amazing, bro. I mean, call me a conspiracy theorist, but you deserve to be knighted if you actually get these people to do that in schools, because I almost just feel like there's a clear intention for not doing it, because by now it's obvious to Stephen Wonder that this is something that should be happening.
That is true, but you know what it is, right? When the curriculum was created, the world was a very different place. So back then, you had a job for life with a guaranteed pension for life. The world has transformed, has changed. It's no longer like that. And I think if you look at it for what it is, we just haven't caught up yet, and we need to. Now, when you're having these conversations with MPs, you have to go at it from an economic point of view. What is the economic benefit of you doing this? And there are numbers there that stack up in terms of the fact that people will be better equipped to start successful businesses. People will be better equipped to not rely on the state for benefits, right? The productivity in terms of the tax take is increased with better financial education, better decisions. So the economic data is there, and that's what you need to lead with.
Absolutely, and that makes perfect sense. Honestly, bro, this has been such an incredible conversation. I'm super, super excited about this. Genuinely, this has been, you have an expectation before someone comes, but then you're like, yes, I'm so happy. It's hit that standing and gone above. So yeah,
thank you, bro.
So much.
Thank you, man.
We've got a second tradition.
Yep.
Which is with everything that you have now achieved. And I think you might have touched on this a little bit, but I'll ask the question anyway. With everything that you've now actually achieved, what now remains your need to succeed?
Increasing my footprint and having as much impact as possible. And that's a difficult one to try and come to terms with and try and execute. But it is going to be built in. It's built into some of the plans that I had. I did a massive spider graph in 2019 before I started Conversation of Money in 2020. And unbeknownst to me then, everything that I put in that spider graph is still very, very true today. It just so happens that the YouTube channel's done great. The podcast is doing great. I've done national TV. I've got a best-selling book. All of that facilitates and gives me more, I guess, kudos to be able to deliver on the spider graph a bit later on. So for me, it's about creating something that has wider impact that hopefully can remain either free or low cost to the general public, to individuals, where companies pay for the delivery of it. That bit is hard to sort out from a business point of view, but that's the challenge that I'm taking on.
Wow. Peter Komolafe, thank you very much.
Thank you, man.